Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped off the shuttle onto the burning surface of Xerion Prime. The planet's twin suns made everything feel like standing inside an oven. He tugged at his diplomatic uniform, missing his old jeans and cowboy boots back on the ranch in Montana. "Remember, Morrison," Ambassador Kevin Walsh said beside him, adjusting his own formal clothes. "This is the most important peace talk in human history. The Vorac Empire controls half the galaxy. One wrong move and we could be looking at war." Jake nodded, though he was more worried about not tripping over his own feet than starting a war. He was just a backup diplomat, only here because he spoke decent Vorac and grew up dealing with difficult animals. Walsh was the real expert. "Captain," Lisa Parker's voice crackled through their earpieces from the USS Liberty in orbit. "Remember, gentlemen, these lizard people take their religion very seriously. Whatever you do, don't touch anything sacred." The Vorac greeting party approached, them across the rocky ground. They were tall, 8 feet at least, with dark green scales that shimmered in the sunlight. Their leader wore flowing robes covered in golden symbols. Jake thought they looked like walking dinosaurs, but kept that opinion to himself. "Welcome, humans," the leader said in heavily accented English. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "I am Xerion, High Priest of the Eternal Flame. You come to speak of peace between our peoples." Ambassador Walsh stepped forward and gave a perfect diplomatic bow. "We are honored by your welcome, High Priest. I am Ambassador Kevin Walsh, and this is my colleague Jake Morrison. We hope to build friendship between Earth and the Vorac Empire." Xerion studied them both with yellow eyes that reminded Jake of a hawk. "Come. The Sacred Council waits in the Temple of the Divine Scion. There our most holy guardian will judge if you speak with honest hearts." They walked through the alien city toward a massive pyramid that rose like a mountain from the center. Jake had seen pictures, but being here made him feel very small. The pyramid was covered in carvings of dragons and flames, all glowing with soft blue light. "What exactly is this guardian?" Walsh asked as they climbed the wide steps. "The divine, scion of the eternal flame," Xerion said with deep respect. "For 3,000 years it has protected our people and blessed our leaders. It chooses who is worthy through sacred communion." Jake frowned. That sounded like a fancy way of saying the thing would either like them or eat them. He had dealt with plenty of unpredictable animals on the ranch. The trick was staying calm and not showing fear. Inside the temple, the air was cooler but thick with the smell of incense. Alien priests in robes lined the walls, chanting in low voices. At the center of the huge room sat something that made Jake's jaw drop. It looked like a dragon from old Earth stories, but bigger than a school bus. Its body was covered in what looked like living crystal that changed colors as it breathed. Wings folded against its back sparkled like diamonds. When it opened its eyes to look at them, Jake saw intelligence there, ancient and deep. "Behold," Xerion whispered, "the divine scion." Ambassador Walsh stepped forward carefully, pulling out a prepared speech from his jacket. "Great and mighty guardian, we come seeking—" The creature's head swung toward Walsh, and its eyes flashed red. A low growl rumbled from its throat that made the floor vibrate. Walsh took a quick step back, his face pale. "It senses your fear," Xerion said. "The divine scion sees into hearts. It knows when one tries to deceive or when one's spirit is weak." Jake watched the huge creature carefully. It reminded him of Thunder, the biggest bull on his family's ranch. Thunder looked scary and could be dangerous, but mostly he was just lonely and wanted someone to understand him. This dragon thing had the same look in its eyes. While Walsh tried again with his formal speech, Jake noticed how the creature moved. Its head tilted like a curious dog. Its tail twitched like a nervous cat. When priests came too close, it pulled back slightly. This wasn't some mystical judge of souls. This was just a very big, very lonely animal that everyone was too scared to treat normally. "Ambassador," Jake said quietly, "maybe I should try." "Absolutely not," Walsh hissed. "You'll get us both killed." But Jake was already walking forward, ignoring the gasps from the priests. He moved slowly, keeping his hands visible, the same way he approached spooked horses. "Hey there, big guy," he said in a calm, friendly voice. "You're a handsome fellow, aren't you?" The creature's eyes fixed on him, but the red glow faded. Jake stopped about 10 feet away and crouched down to seem less threatening. "I bet nobody ever just talks to you normal, do they?" Jake continued. "All this bowing and chanting and formal stuff must get pretty boring." To everyone's shock, the creature leaned its massive head forward, sniffing in Jake's direction. Its crystal scales shifted to a soft blue color. "That's right," Jake said, taking another step closer. "I'm not here to worship you or be scared of you. You're just doing your job, right? Like a big guard dog." He reached out slowly and touched the creature's snout. The crystal felt warm and smooth. The creature made a sound like a giant cat purring. "Well, I'll be," Jake said with a grin. "You're just a big softy, aren't you, Fluffy?" The temple erupted in chaos. Priests shouted in alarm. Xerion dropped to his knees, speaking rapidly in his own language. But the creature that Jake had just named Fluffy pressed against his hand like a horse asking for more attention. Ambassador Walsh stared in complete shock as Jake scratched behind the creature's crystal horns and Fluffy closed his eyes in obvious pleasure. "Jake," Walsh whispered, "what have you done?" The news spread across Xerion Prime like wildfire. Within hours, every Vorac on the planet knew that a human had touched their sacred guardian and lived. More shocking still, the divine scion had seemed to enjoy it. Jake sat in his guest quarters, aboard the USS Liberty, looking out at the alien city below. Crowds of Vorac had gathered in the streets, some carrying signs with symbols he could not read. Captain Lisa Parker stood beside him, shaking her head. "Half of them want to worship you," she said. "The other half want to tear you apart with their bare claws. Ambassador Walsh is having a nervous breakdown, and I have 3 Vorac warships asking permission to blow us out of space." "I just petted the thing," Jake said. "How was I supposed to know it would cause this much trouble?" Dr. Emma Rodriguez entered the room carrying a tablet full of data. She was the ship's expert on alien life, a small woman with thick glasses who got excited about the strangest things. "Jake, you need to see this," she said, practically bouncing with enthusiasm. "I've been studying the scans we took of your new friend. That creature isn't native to this planet." Jake frowned. "What do you mean?" "Its DNA is completely different from every other life form on Xerion Prime. It's not even close. That creature came from somewhere else, probably thousands of years ago." Emma pulled up images on her tablet. "And look at this brain scan. It's not just intelligent, it's empathic. It can sense emotions and respond to them." "So it knew I wasn't afraid," Jake said. "Exactly. The Vorac approach it with fear and worship, but you treated it like a normal animal. That's why it responded to you." Emma grinned. "You accidentally did the one thing that could make friends with it." A communication alert sounded. Captain Parker activated the screen and Xerion appeared. The High Priest looked like he had not slept in days. "Humans," he said in his grinding voice. "You must return to the surface. The situation grows dangerous." "What's happening down there?" Parker asked. "My people are divided. Some believe Morrison is the beast friend spoken of in ancient prophecy. Others call him a demon who has corrupted our sacred guardian." Xerion paused. "General Marcus Stone leads the second group. He demands that Morrison be handed over for judgment." Jake stood up. "What kind of judgment?" "The kind that usually ends with execution," Xerion said grimly. "But there is another voice that speaks louder than Stone's anger. Elder Krithos has awakened from her meditation. She wishes to speak with you about the old warnings." An hour later, Jake found himself back in the temple, but this time with a security escort. The crowds outside were larger and louder. Some threw flowers while others threw rocks. Fluffy was still in the center of the room, but now he was surrounded by nervous priests with energy weapons. When Jake entered, Fluffy's head lifted and his crystal scales shifted to happy blue colors. The creature made soft rumbling sounds that sounded almost like a greeting. "He remembers you," said a new voice. Jake turned to see an ancient Vorac female approaching. She was smaller than the others. Her scales faded to pale gray with age, but her yellow eyes were sharp and alert. "I am Elder Krithos," she said. I have studied the old texts for over 2 centuries. The writings speak of a time when the burning stars would return, bringing death from the dark places between worlds. Burning stars? Jake asked. The Devourers, Krithos whispered. Long ago, before our civilization rose, they came from the darkness beyond the galaxy. They fed on the life energy of entire worlds, leaving nothing but dead rock behind. Ambassador Walsh, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. These are myths, surely. Ancient stories to frighten children. Elder Krithos fixed him with a stare that could have melted steel. The divine scion and its kin are not myths, human. They were created by the Builders, a race that fought the Devourers in the last war. Each one is a living weapon, designed to bond with a worthy partner. She pointed at Fluffy with one clawed finger. For 3,000 years we have cared for the divine scion, but we could never unlock its true power. We approached it with ceremony and distance, as our ancestors taught us. But the old writings speak of riders who would come in the final time, those who would treat the sacred ones not as gods but as companions. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. You think I'm one of these riders? I think you are what the divine scion has been waiting for, Krithos said. Suddenly alarms began blaring throughout the temple. Captain Parker's voice crackled through Jake's communicator. All teams, we have contacts approaching from deep space. Long-range sensors show multiple large vessels, but they're not reading like any known ship design. General Marcus Stone burst into the temple with a squad of heavily armed Vorac soldiers. He was bigger than the others, with darker scales and scars across his face. Enough of this madness, he roared in accented English. Whatever approaches our world, we will face it as Vorac, not hiding behind human magic and ancient fairy tales. Marcus, you fool, Xexathari said. Listen to the warnings. But Stone was already moving toward Jake, his weapon raised. This human has corrupted our sacred guardian. I will end this blasphemy now. Fluffy saw the threat and let out a roar that shook the entire temple. His crystal scales flashed from blue to angry red as he stepped protectively in front of Jake. Energy began to crackle along his horns and wings. Stand down, all of you, Elder Krithos commanded with surprising authority. Look at your screens. Look at what comes for us all. On the temple's viewing screens, images appeared from the approaching fleet. The ships were dark and twisted like metal that had been burned and shaped by nightmares. There were dozens of them, each one larger than the biggest Vorac warship. The Devourers return, Krithos said quietly. After 10,000 years of exile in the dark places, they have found us again. And we are not ready. General Stone lowered his weapon, his face pale beneath his scales. Ambassador Walsh stared at the screens in shock. But Jake found himself looking at Fluffy, who had turned to gaze at him with those ancient, intelligent eyes. What do you need me to do, big guy? Jake asked softly. Fluffy's response was to lower his great head until it was level with Jake's chest, the same gesture horses made when they wanted their rider to mount up. Jake looked around at all the staring, faces human and Vorac alike. Then he shrugged and climbed onto Fluffy's back. The moment he settled between the creature's shoulders, everything changed. Power flowed between them like electricity, and Jake suddenly understood what Fluffy truly was. Not just a pet or a guardian, but a partner. A friend who had been waiting a very long time for someone to trust him. Well, Jake said, patting Fluffy's neck as crystal armor began forming around them both. I guess we better get ready for company. The first attack came at dawn. Jake woke to the sound of explosions echoing across the temple grounds. He rolled out of his sleeping mat and rushed to the window. In the distance, dark shapes moved through the sky like angry storm clouds, but these clouds shot beams of red light that turned everything they touched to ash. All hands to battle stations, Captain Parker's voice crackled through his communicator. We have hostile contacts attacking the surface. Jake, get to the temple, now. Jake ran through corridors filled with panicking priests and soldiers. When he reached the main chamber, he found chaos. Half the roof had been blown away, letting in the smoky morning air. Fluffy stood in the center, his crystal scales flashing bright white as energy weapons emerged from his shoulders and back. Jake, called High Priestess Valandra, Xexathari's daughter, She was younger than most of the other priests, with lighter green scales and intelligent eyes. "The scouts have found us. The Devourers know where the divine scion rests." Through the hole in the roof, Jake could see the enemy ships. They looked like black metal twisted into impossible shapes, covered in red lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. As he watched, one of them fired a beam that vaporized an entire city block. "Those things are alive," Dr. Rodriguez said, appearing beside them with her scanner. "The ships, I mean. They're not machines. They're living creatures wrapped in metal and technology." Commander Alex Bennett from the USS Liberty materialized next to them in a shower of transporter light, carrying a heavy weapon. "The captain sent me down with reinforcements. Our shields are holding for now, but those things pack more firepower than anything we've ever seen." Another explosion rocked the temple. Through the smoke, Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. One of the twisted ships was landing in the courtyard outside. Its metal shell was opening like a flower, revealing something inside that hurt to look at directly. "Don't let them touch you," Elder Krethos said, appearing at Jake's side despite her age. "The Devourers feed on life energy. One touch and they will drain you to nothing." The thing that emerged from the ship looked like a shadow given form, but a shadow with too many arms and eyes that burned like stars. It flowed across the ground toward the temple, leaving dead plants and cracked stone in its wake. "The barriers will not hold them long," Valandra said. "They hunger for the divine scion's power." Jake looked at Fluffy, who was watching the approaching enemy with calm determination. The crystal dragon's eyes met his, and Jake felt a strange warmth in his mind, like someone was speaking to him without words. "Trust me," the feeling seemed to say. "We can do this together." "Everyone get back," Jake said, walking toward Fluffy. "I think we're about to find out what this big guy can really do." "Jake, no," Commander Bennett called. "We don't know what will happen." But Jake was already climbing onto Fluffy's back. The moment he settled into place, the world exploded into sensation. Power flowed through him like lightning, and suddenly he could feel everything Fluffy felt. The creature's strength, his ancient memories, his purpose. Fluffy was not just a weapon. He was a guardian, created by a race of beings who had fought the Devourers across the galaxy. He had been waiting for 3,000 years for someone who could truly bond with him, someone who would treat him as a partner instead of a tool. Crystal armor formed around Jake's body as Fluffy's wings spread wide. Energy weapons locked into position along the dragon's sides and back. Jake felt the targeting systems connecting with his thoughts, showing him exactly where each enemy was located. "Hold on," Jake said to himself, though he was not sure if he was talking to Jake or to Fluffy anymore. They launched into the air like a rocket. The sensation of flying was incredible, better than any dream Jake had ever had. Below them, the shadow creature looked up with its burning eyes and screamed, a sound that shattered windows across the city. Jake felt Fluffy's weapon systems activate. Energy beams lanced out from the dragon's body, each one guided by their combined will. The beam struck the Devourer scout and it writhed, its shadow form beginning to break apart. "It's working," Jake shouted over the wind. The energy weapons actually hurt these things. More Devourer scouts were emerging from other ships around the city. Jake and Fluffy dove toward them, moving like a single creature. Every shot was perfect, every maneuver exactly right. They were not just rider and mount, they were something new, something the ancient enemy had never faced before. "Impossible," General Stone's voice came through the communicator. "The human and the divine scion fight as one being. I have never seen such power." One of the larger Devourer ships turned its weapons toward them. Jake felt the danger before he saw it. Fluffy's instincts warning him to move. They rolled sideways as a massive energy beam passed through the space where they had been flying. "These big ones are tougher," Jake realized. "We need more firepower." The warmth in his mind grew stronger, and suddenly Jake understood. Fluffy was not fighting at full power. The dragon had been holding back, afraid of hurting the people below. But Jake trusted him completely, and that trust was exactly what Fluffy needed. New weapons emerged from Fluffy's body, larger and brighter than before. When they fired, The energy beams were like miniature suns. The Devourer ship screamed as its metal shell cracked and the shadow creature inside began to dissolve. By the ancestors, Xerion's voice whispered through the communicator. The prophecy is true. The beast friend has come. But their victory was short-lived. More ships were appearing on the horizon, dozens of them. The real Devourer fleet was still coming, and these had just been scouts. Jake and Fluffy landed back in the temple courtyard, both of them breathing hard. The crystal armor faded away, but Jake could still feel the connection between them, warm and strong. That was just the beginning, Elder Krithos said, her old eyes bright with hope and fear. The main fleet will arrive soon, and they will not be caught by surprise. Then we better get ready, Jake said, patting Fluffy's neck. How many more of these guys do you have sleeping in temples? Velandra smiled for the first time since the attack began. 7 more across our empire, but they have never awakened, not in all the centuries we have cared for them. Jake grinned back at her. Well, I guess it's time for some wake-up calls. Above them, Captain Parker's voice crackled through the communicator with news that made everyone's heart sink. Long-range sensors show the main Devourer fleet. Over 200 ships approaching fast. Estimated arrival time is 6 hours. Jake looked around at all the worried faces, human and Vorac alike. Then he looked at Fluffy, who gazed back at him with complete trust. 6 hours, Jake said. That should be just enough time to round up the gang. The word spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. Within 3 hours of Jake's first battle with the Devourer scouts, every major world knew that the ancient enemy had returned. Emergency fleets began jumping toward Xerion, prime from dozens of star systems. Admiral Susan Hayes arrived first with the largest Earth fleet ever assembled. Her ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, bristling with weapons and ready for war. Jake watched from the temple as the massive vessels took positions around the planet. Jake, Captain Parker's voice came through his communicator. The Admiral wants to meet you personally. She's coming down with reinforcements. An hour later, Admiral Hayes stood in the damaged temple, studying Fluffy with the eyes of someone who had seen many impossible things. She was a tall woman with gray hair and scars on her hands from years of military service. So this is our secret weapon, she said. I have to admit, when the reports came in about a cowboy riding a crystal dragon, I thought someone was playing a joke. He's not a weapon, Jake said, scratching behind Fluffy's horns. He's a partner. Hayes nodded slowly. That might be even better. My tech teams have been studying the battle recordings. The way you two move together, it's like you share the same mind. Sometimes it feels that way, Jake admitted. Tech specialist Ryan Clark, a young engineer with grease-stained hands, emerged from behind one of Fluffy's wings carrying a scanner. Admiral, you need to see this. The creature's crystal structure can interface directly with our ship systems. If we modify our fighters with crystalline components, we could create hybrid vessels. Dr. Rodriguez appeared beside him, practically vibrating with excitement. And I've figured out why Jake can bond with it when the Vorac can't. It's not about species, it's about approach. The creature responds to genuine emotional connection, not formal worship. Xerion entered the chamber, with news that made everyone turn. The other temples have agreed to awaken their guardians. But there is a problem. What kind of problem? Admiral Hayes asked. Our priests cannot make the connection. They have tried for hours, but the sacred ones remain dormant. They sense no worthy bond. Jake frowned. Maybe they need someone who isn't afraid of them. My thoughts exactly, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see War Master Thekmor, the commander of the Vorac fleet. He was even larger than General Stone, with battle scars covering his dark scales. Behind him walked several humans and Vorac. I have brought volunteers, Thekmor continued. Humans who work with animals on their worlds, and Vorac who wish to try a new approach to the sacred ones. Jake looked at the group. There was Captain Maria Santos, a former Air Force pilot with steady eyes. Beside her stood a young Vorac named Kesathan, who looked nervous but determined. Others followed, a mix of species and backgrounds. Have any of you ever ridden a horse? Jake asked. Maria raised her hand. Grew up on a ranch in Texas. Good start, Jake said. The most important thing is to treat them like living beings, not magic artifacts. They can sense your emotions, so stay calm and be honest. Over the next 4 hours, Jake found himself running the strangest training program of his life. He taught humans and Vorac how to approach the sleeping crystal dragons with respect instead of fear. It was like teaching people to handle nervous horses, except these horses could fly and shoot energy beams. Ryan Clark worked with Vorac engineers to modify their fastest ships. They installed crystalline interfaces that would let the awakened dragons connect directly with the vessel's systems. The result was something nobody had ever seen before: living ships that could think and react faster than any computer. The first success came at the temple on Vorthak's moon. Captain Santos approached the sleeping dragon there with the same calm confidence Jake had shown Fluffy. When the creature opened its eyes and pressed its massive head against her hand, everyone watching held their breath. "Well, hello there, beautiful," Maria said softly. "Want to go for a ride?" Within an hour, she was flying through space on the dragon's back, both of them wrapped in crystal armor and moving like they had been partners for years. The second breakthrough happened when young Kesthan managed to bond with a dragon on the mining world of Kethvar. Unlike the others, his dragon was smaller and faster, built for speed rather than heavy combat. The young one shows promise, Elder Krethos observed as they watched the new pair practice flying. Perhaps the old ways were wrong. Perhaps the sacred ones were meant to choose their own partners. By the time Admiral Hayes received the warning that the main Devourer fleet had been spotted, they had successfully awakened 5 of the 7 sleeping dragons. 2 more were still dormant, their temples too far away to reach in time. "Status report," Hayes commanded from the Liberty's bridge. 230 enemy ships confirmed, her tactical officer reported. "They'll reach Xerion Prime in 1 hour. Jake stood on the bridge beside Fluffy, who had somehow managed to fit his massive bulk into the ship's cargo bay. The crystal dragon's presence made all the ship's systems run smoother, as if he was helping them think faster. "What's our plan?" Jake asked. Admiral Hayes pulled up a tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet. "Combined Earth and Vorac forces number about 80 ships. We're outnumbered almost 3 to 1. But we have something they don't. Expect," War Master Thekmore added from his own ship. "The Sacred Ones fight with us now." 5 dragon riders against 200 ships, Captain Parker said grimly. "Those aren't good odds." Jake patted Fluffy's neck, feeling the warm connection between them. Around the galaxy, he knew the other riders were feeling the same thing. Maria Santos with her graceful dragon, Kesathon with his swift partner, 2 other teams they had managed to train in the final hours. "Maybe not," Jake said. "But we're not just 5 riders. We're 5 partnerships that these Devourers have never faced before." On the tactical screen, the enemy fleet grew larger and more menacing, but Jake felt something he had not expected. Excitement. Fluffy was eager for the coming battle, and that eagerness was infectious. "All ships, prepare for engagement," Admiral Hayes commanded. "Dragon riders, you're our secret weapon. Hit them fast and hard, then get out before they can adapt." Jake climbed onto Fluffy's back, feeling the familiar sensation of crystal armor forming around them both. "Ready, big guy?" Fluffy's response was a rumble of anticipation that echoed through the ship's hull. "All riders report ready," Maria's voice came through the communicator. "Then let's go show these Devourers what happens when you mess with our galaxy," Jake said. Through the Liberty's bay doors, they could see the first enemy ships beginning to appear, dark shapes against the stars that seemed to swallow light itself. The final battle was about to begin. The Devourer fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts. Their ships blotted out the stars, each one twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. At the center of the fleet was something that made even the bravest soldiers afraid. A ship the size of a small moon, covered in red lights that pulsed like a dying heart. 250 ships confirmed, Admiral Hayes reported from the Liberty's bridge. "And that thing in the middle is off the charts for energy readings." Jake sat on Fluffy's back in the cargo bay, feeling his partner's tension through their bond. The crystal dragon could sense the evil approaching, the hunger that wanted to devour all life in the galaxy. "Dragon riders report status," Admiral Hayes commanded. Rider 2 ready, Captain Maria Santos responded. Her dragon, which she had named Star, was smaller than Fluffy, but just as eager for battle. Rider 3 ready, came the voice of Keston, the young Vorthak. His dragon was the fastest of them all, built for hit-and-run attacks. The other 2 riders, a human engineer named Tom Walsh and a Vorthak warrior called Veltar, confirmed their readiness. 5 dragon riders against the largest enemy fleet anyone had ever seen. All ships, this is Admiral Hayes. The commander's voice echoed across both human and Vorthak fleets. Today we fight not just for our worlds, but for the right of all life to exist in this galaxy. Show these Devourers what happens when free people stand together. The battle began with a thunderclap of weapons fire. Human and Vorthak ships opened, up with everything they had, filling space with energy beams and missiles. The Devourers responded with their own terrible weapons, beams of dark energy that could drain the life from entire ships. Dragon Riders, you're clear to engage, Admiral Hayes ordered. Hit them hard and fast. Jake and Fluffy launched from the Liberty's Bay like a shooting star. The sensation of flying through space was even better than atmospheric flight. There was no air resistance, nothing to slow them down except the laws of physics. Around them, the other Dragon Riders spread out. In a loose formation, each pair moved differently, reflecting the personality of both rider and dragon. Maria and Star danced through space like figure skaters. Keston and his partner moved in sudden bursts of speed that confused enemy targeting systems. The Devourer ships were even more horrible up close. Their hulls were not just metal but some kind of living tissue wrapped around machines. Tendrils of dark energy reached out from them, trying to drain power from anything that came too close. Remember what Dr. Rodriguez said? Jake called to the other riders. These things feed on life energy. Our dragons can turn that against them. Fluffy's weapon systems came online as they approached their first target. But instead of just firing, energy beams, something new happened. The dragon began to glow with white light, and that light seemed to pull at the darkness surrounding the enemy ship. The Devourer vessel writhed as its own dark energy was turned against it. The living parts of its hull began to shrivel and die. Within seconds, the ship was just dead metal floating in space. It works, Jake shouted with excitement. The dragons can reverse their energy drain. But their celebration was cut short when the massive command ship at the center of the fleet began to move. It was heading straight for Earth's solar system, and it was moving faster than anything that big should be able to move. All ships, the command vessel is breaking away, Admiral Hayes reported. It's making a run for Earth. Jake felt a chill of fear. If that thing reached Earth, it could drain the life from the entire planet in hours. Dragon Riders, new mission. Admiral Hayes continued. Pursue and stop that command ship. The rest of us will handle the fleet here. The 5 Dragon Riders broke away from the main battle and gave chase. In space, the dragons could move even faster than their ships, pushing the laws of physics in ways that science could not explain. But the command ship was already too far ahead. It would reach Earth's solar system long before they could catch up. We need more speed, Jake said, feeling Fluffy's frustration through their bond. That was when something impossible happened. The other dragons began to glow, and streams of energy connected them all together. Suddenly, Jake could feel not just Fluffy's thoughts, but the minds of all 5 dragons and their riders. What's happening? Maria asked in wonder. We're linking up, Jake realized. They're sharing power. The combined speed was incredible. 5 dragons and riders moving as one entity, faster than light itself. They caught up to the command ship just as it entered Earth's solar system. The Devourer Prime was waiting for them. It emerged from the command ship like a nightmare made real. Bigger than any of the other Devourers, it was pure shadow given form, with eyes like burning stars and arms that reached across space itself. So, it spoke directly into their minds with a voice like dying worlds. The little animals think they can stop the hunger that devours galaxies. You ride toys made by a dead race. These aren't toys, Jake said, his voice steady despite the fear trying to grip his heart. They're our friends. The Devourer Prime laughed, a sound that made planets shudder. Friends? You understand nothing, little creature. I am eternal. I have consumed 1,000 worlds and will consume 1,000 more. The battle that followed was like nothing anyone had ever seen. The Devourer Prime was incredibly powerful, its dark energy able to reach across millions of miles. But the 5 dragon riders worked together with perfect coordination, their bond allowing them to move as parts of a single organism. Every time the Prime tried to drain their energy, the dragons reflected it back. Every attack it made, they countered, with 5 responses. Slowly, incredibly, they began to drive it back. Impossible, the Prime screamed. Nothing can defeat the hunger. You're wrong, Jake said as Fluffy prepared for the final attack. The hunger loses when people care about each other more than they fear you. The combined energy blast from all 5 dragons hit the Devourer Prime like a miniature sun. But instead of destroying it, something even more amazing happened. The dark shadow began to change, becoming lighter and more solid, until finally it looked like what it had been before the hunger consumed it, a being not unlike the dragons themselves. What have you done? It asked, its voice now confused instead of evil. We gave you back what you lost, Jake said gently. The ability to create instead of just consume. Back at Xerion Prime, the battle was turning. Without their Prime to guide them, the other Devourers began to change as well. The hunger that had driven them for 10,000 years was finally broken. 6 months later, Jake stood in the temple on Xerion Prime, watching Fluffy play with 3 young dragons that had recently hatched. The galaxy was at peace for the first time in ages, with former Devourers working alongside humans and Vorac to rebuild what had been lost. You know, he said to Captain Parker, who had come to visit, when I signed up to be a backup diplomat, I never thought I'd end up as the galaxy's first dragon rider. Parker smiled. And when I joined the Space Navy, I never thought I'd be friends with a crystal dragon named Fluffy. Jake scratched behind Fluffy's horns, earning a contented rumble. Turns out the secret to saving the galaxy was just treating everyone like they matter, even the scary-looking ones. Outside the temple, human and Vorac children played together. In the courtyard, while overhead, dragon riders from a dozen different worlds practiced their flying. The universe was big and full of wonders, and Jake Morrison from Montana was exactly where he belonged,